So I'm going to try to like walk through this. For those that are not familiar, Richard has a law background. He's a practicing lawyer. I'm guessing are you still practicing or yeah. So this is his wheelhouse. But I want to really learn about the logistics of it. So Q1 2023 comes in. Theoretically, I think this bill says starting in that period, companies should be able to take advantage of the credit. So what happens? What needs to happen for Tesla to be able to realize that cash on its balance sheet? Do they have to submit a form that says this is how much we sent, and then it goes through that approval process?
My guess, and I don't know, but my guess is the IRS will issue some type of regulations or guidelines, and will say if you fit within these guidelines, you're able to take the credit. They'll create a new form 107BQ. You'll file that whenever you need to file it. And then, you'll assert whatever you're entitled to, and they'll have the right to come back and contest any portion they think you're not entitled to. And then if it's a tax issue, there's like a tax court you can take it through. But there might be constitutional issues related to the ability to provide the credit because there's usually people in Congress that are going to oppose something, and it depends how vociferously they oppose it, depends how much power they have it, but they might say it's unconstitutional and take it to a federal court, which is kind of another line of attack.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Does the IRS, so then this really wouldn't be filed by, the form wouldn't be created for Tesla to file, say, until the first or second quarter of the following year, right? Because that's when they're able to take advantage of the credit in my head, right? Something like.
Well, that's going to be an issue too, because the IRS is probably operating at low capacity personnel-wise, and this is probably a complicated task. And it's whenever they get the guidelines and regulations done. Hopefully they can do it before the end of the year, but there's no guarantee they will.
Yep. Interesting. So,
and you're not going to have to, theoretically, it wouldn't come up really to the following year anyway, your next tax return. So they really wouldn't have to have it finalized until sometime in 2023.
So one of the specific questions that we had on that was, do you understand the mechanics? Like, are these tax credits that potentially they could get cash from the government for, or which ones are, which ones aren't, and then which ones just really offset their tax liabilities?
Yeah, so tax credit is better than a direct payment, and the items that they would get a tax credit on would be making of the battery cells and modules, and any of the tax credits for making of the cathode or refining the lithium. So they have the cathode factory going up in Giga, Texas. They would get a 10% tax credit for their cost of making the cathode there. If they make a lithium refinery in Texas somewhere, they would get a 10% cost reduction for that as well, tax credit. And for all those items, they can elect to receive those as a direct payment, because all those fall under the advanced manufacturing, production manufacturing credit, or whatever it's called.
So those being the $35 for the cells and the $10 for the
modules.
The modules.
Yeah.
So those are actual direct payment.
Those they can elect for direct payment, yeah, and that's like a 4 or 5 year period that they can start doing that. Yeah.
Wow.
So in one of the Biden bills, didn't the minimum corporate tax rate go to 15%?
Yeah, it did, but there's I'm not a tax attorney, and I did do a space on this with Matt Smith of Good Soil Investment. Let me point you to it. So there's a website, velaw.com, and they have an article called Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, Corporate Alternative Minimum Tax. And basically on these advanced credits, what it allows is that you can use, let's say the alternative minimum tax says your tax is going to be $2 billion, that's a tax owed. you can offset 75% of that with these advanced manufacturing things. So basically, if Tesla does have that 15% alternative minimum corporate tax, they can get it down to 3.75 potentially.
It's hard, Bradford, to put this on the EPS line, right? Like I originally was thinking like, okay, 1.5 billion, 3 billion shares outstanding. That's 50%. That's 50 cents EPS next fiscal year. But it's not that simple. So it's I guess it's hard to get super excited about it, but it is going to be a material thing over the next 8 years, let's say, right?
Yeah. So let's think about Giga Texas. So it was thought that as Tesla has to scale Model Y and they go to 500,000 cars per year, that they would have to lower prices. But now that there's this vehicle credit as well, the potentially qualifying for up to 7,500 per vehicle, they may not have to reduce prices. So Tesla's going to be able to hold firm on the top line, which is the revenue. And then on the cost level, their battery costs are going to go way down, so their costs are going to drop down. So it's going to help there. And if you think conservatively about Model Y, like before any of this, the gross margin is 30%. So we'll do a little napkin math, a little mathawana here. So we take a $60,000 car, 500,000 vehicles. I believe that's $30 billion. And if you multiply that by a gross margin of 30%, that's $9 billion in gross profit from that factory. So that would potentially cause, like, if for a normal corporation, 20-25% tax rate. I'm not an accountant. So that would be like $1.8 billion in tax.
Okay.
So this is helping them offset some tax. For me, my Tesla model, I kind of have them paying like 20% corporate tax, which is, that's a high level and conservative. So for Matt Smith, he had Tesla not paying any tax in the U.S. for a long time because they have these things called loss carry forwards,
right?
And they're technically called net operating losses, or NOLs, that they can already use to offset tax. So this is why some people are like, well, I don't know, but this is just solidifying the investment in the battery space and minerals and refining. And I think, solidifying supply, not just for Tesla, but also, GM, Ford, even Honda, who we're not sure if they're even making EVs. They're looking at a battery factory in the US. So look at what people are doing and planning, and that's a big deal. And Tesla's literally taking machinery from Germany and moving it over to Texas. They still may make some batteries in Germany, but they kind of put that on pause. Go ahead, Farzad.
I appreciate that. Think about the scale of that statement you just made. They're taking machinery from Germany and moving it to the United States to take advantage of this bill. So that should put within context just how large of an opportunity this is for a company like Tesla. I mean, they'll pull any levers they can to maximize what they're trying to do, but moving machinery from one country to another is not cheap.
No.
It's really expensive. So I think that,
and it's not just the cost of moving it. You got to re-engineer everything,
uninstall, reinstall, exactly.
And it's not just the cost.
Things.
Yeah, it's not just the cost and difficulty. It's
time.
Just pulling the trigger. Yeah, pulling the trigger on it right away. Who does that? That's difficult to get a decision maker to make a decision right away.
And what also got me fired up about it is, when have we seen Panasonic act aggressively? Tesla's had to beg and plead with them to grow their battery capacity at Giga Nevada. And all Panasonic would do in response is increase things by 10% over the next 2 or 3 years, And now suddenly Panasonic decides on Kansas over Oklahoma, and then they're like, then this legislation passes, then Panasonic's like, okay, we're going to do another 4 billion factory in Oklahoma. So it's like, look at the actions of what they're doing. This is a big deal, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of investment.